I crossed over, becoming the sister of the CEO, Matthew Campbell, Lois Campbell. Right now, I was holding the $8 million necklace Kathryn Barnes, his fiancée, gave me, feeling quite pleased with myself. But the next moment, my hopeless brother suddenly brought back a woman from the slums, Nancy Decker, and claimed that they were truly in love. I object. I immediately shouted, standing up. My dad froze for a second just as he was about to explode, and everyone in the room turned to look at me. Matthew, how could you do this? I quickly walked over to them, gazing at their tightly intertwined hands, and spoke with a pained expression, such an important matter, and you didn't even give us a heads up. You had to bring it up in front of both families? Dad always taught us to be considerate and know our place. Look at you now, acting like you're forcing everyone's hand. What kind of example is this? As I spoke, my dad's expression softened, and he looked at me with a hint of approval, nodding slightly. Matthew was shocked that I, usually so clueless, could say something like that to educate him. He stood frozen, his face turning red with embarrassment. I sighed and, with my hands behind my back, continued seriously, and on top of that, you chose such an informal occasion, not only embarrassing yourself but also showing a lack of respect for the lady beside you. Matthew, the mighty CEO, went from confident to deeply ashamed. He looked down and mumbled. I didn't consider this properly. I'm sorry. With that, the two of them awkwardly left the house hand in hand. I turned around, put on my sweetest smile, and obediently sat next to Kathryn, Matthew's fiancée. Kathryn, don't mind them. Please continue telling me about your studies in Varelia. Kathryn smiled shyly and continued talking with me. Meanwhile, my dad had taken Kathryn's father aside, likely discussing something important. I thought after yesterday's incident, Matthew would have learned his lesson. But to my surprise, early this morning, that slum girl showed up again in our living room. If I wasn't mistaken, she was even holding a dirty duck. I widened my eyes, quickly hurrying down from the second floor in my slippers, and rushed to stop her. No. The stupid duck seemed to be especially out to get me, immediately jumping onto my exclusive lounge chair and leaving big, messy prints all over the cushion. Damn it, I was too late. I stood there, glaring at it, my fists tightening with anger. That chair was made from royal-grade fabric, specially brought back from Havendale by my dad. I only allowed myself an hour to sit on it each day just to avoid wrinkling it. And now it smelled like a disgusting duck. Quack. Suddenly, a devilish sound completely shattered my hope. It actually dared to poop on it. I was going to kill it. Seeing the murderous look in my eyes, Nancy quickly shielded the duck in her arms, staring at me with caution. I forced myself to hold back my anger, gritting my teeth, and said, Ms. Decker, do you have any idea how expensive the thing it just ruined is? Nancy straightened her neck, unashamed, and replied, Sorry. I'll work to pay you back. You can yell at me, but please don't hurt it. I was stunned. How could anyone be so shameless, even when apologizing? I rubbed my forehead, feeling both furious and absurdly amused. Just as I was about to argue with her more, the doorbell suddenly rang. Today, the butler was out with my parents, so I had to open the door myself. As soon as I opened it, I saw Kathryn coming toward me with a whole entourage in tow. Yes, an entourage. And each of them was carrying bags of finely packaged clothes and accessories. The scene was overwhelming. Kathryn took my hand gently and said in a soft voice, Lois, I was in such a rush yesterday that I could only bring you a necklace. I feel bad about it, so today I had someone buy a few more little gifts. Think of them as a welcome present from me. I casually glanced at the bags, all international luxury brands, and limited edition ones at that. Things people couldn't even buy with money. Suddenly, my eyes sparkled, and I eagerly ran over to inspect each item. After running about 200 yards, I thought the line of gifts had finally come to an end. But then, a sharp turn revealed an endless line of bags and packages behind. I was stunned, my gaze darting toward Kathryn, who smiled shyly and covered her mouth. I didn't know which brand you liked, so I just had them buy some of everything. I thought, wow. You're so generous. I rushed up and hugged Kathryn, but I moved to tears. Kathryn, however, noticed Nancy standing nearby, looking on longingly. She politely said, Ms. Decker, if you like any of these, feel free to choose something. Nancy scoffed, rolling her eyes disdainfully. I don't want any of these. You people are too wasteful. I can't stand the hypocrisy of the rich. Everything you do is extravagant, living in luxury. You don't understand the struggles of ordinary people, so stop pretending to be so kind. Kathryn, raised with manners, was stunned by this outburst. She'd never been spoken to like this before, and she didn't know how to respond. But I was different. I crossed over from another world. If you don't like it, then don't stay in my house. Shameless. Also, Kathryn only offered you clothes because you look so poorly dressed. What's so fake about that? Nancy sneered at me, tch, kindness? Don't kid yourself. I can't afford them. You rich heirs have everything handed to you, high and mighty, never knowing what it's like to struggle. But we poor people have our dignity. I thought, not know what it's like to struggle. I reached into my bag and pulled out a stack of donation certificates, slapping them onto her face. These are from 5 years ago, after the floods. I donated $1 million. This is from last year's lunar earthquake. I donated $5 million. This one is from a platforms program to provide supplies for girls in need. I've personally donated to over 10,000 girls. I proceeded to explain each event, showing that my donations weren't just for show. I thoroughly researched and carefully considered each one before donating based on the specific situation. Moreover, these funds were all from my own pocket. I worked hard for every penny, and never once asked my parents for a cent. I stared her down, my voice firm. And what about you? What have you contributed to the people, to the country? Nancy was gradually losing ground, her face shifting in color like a painter's palette. She pointed at me, her voice faltering. You rich people, it's easy for you to do surface-level work, acting all fake. With that, Nancy shot us an angry glare and stormed out of the house. I rolled my eyes and then turned around with a sweet smile and said, Kathryn, stay for dinner today. I'll make you some soup. Kathryn, looking a little confused, nodded dazedly. Ah, okay. I glanced at that damned duck and couldn't help but show a victorious grin.